Welcome to Resilience Development in Action, where strength meets strategy and courage to help you move forward. Each week, your host, Steve Bisson, a therapist with over 2 decades of experience in the first responder community, brings you powerful conversations about resilience, growth, and healing through trauma and grief. Through authentic interviews, expert discussions, and real-world experiences, we dive deep into the heart of human resilience. We explore crucial topics like trauma recovery, grief processing, stress management, and emotional well-being. This is Resilience Development in Action with Steve Bisson.
Hi, and welcome to episode 209. If you haven't listened to episode 208, please go and listen. Bruce Wasser was a great guest, talked about Father's Day, talked about Vietnam, Doc being a conscientious objector, and his memoir, so please go and listen to that. But for episode 209, we're going to be with Becky Schmooke. Becky is someone that was reached out to me, and she's a leadership coach, author, and keynote speaker. She also wrote a book called Choose the Handle That Holds, a guide to living, leading, and owning the moments that matter. She talks about stoic philosophy. She talks about how her personal story empowered her, and she does something called Becky's Mindful Kitchen, where farm life meets leadership training through retreats, camps, and hands-on learning. She has worked with different people from executives to NFL players, and she does enjoy wrangling her baby goats. And she reminds us that leadership is not something you do, it's something that you are. And here's the interview. GetFree.ai. You heard me talk about it. I'm going to keep on talking about it because I love it. I've had about a year and a half, 18 months practice with it, and I still enjoy it. And it saves me time and it saves me energy. Free.ai takes your note, makes a what you're talking with a client, you just press record, and it does either transcript, it does a subjective and an objective with a letter if needed for your client and for whoever might need it. So for $99 a month, it saves me so much time that it's worthwhile. And if you do it for a whole year, guess what? You get 10% off. More importantly, this is what you got to remember, because you are my audience that listens to Resilience Development in Action. If you do listen to this and you want to use free.ai, put in the code STEVE50 in the promo code area, STEVE50, and you will get $50 off in addition to everything we just talked about. Get freed from writing your notes. Get freed from even writing your transcripts. Use that to your advantage. Free.ai, a great service. Go to getfree.ai and you will get one of the best services that will save you time and money. And I highly encourage you to do so. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 209. I'm so happy to have someone who unfortunately already insulted me. She called me sir. I'm Steve. So it's already starting bad, but all joking aside. Becky
wait,
Schmooke,
hold on. That is, sir. Okay, go ahead. Introduce me, and then we're gonna circle back to that one, sir.
I know. Okay, I'll tell you right now. For me, sir is my dad. I don't do, like, for me to connect with people, I don't like using ma'am, sir. If I call you sir or ma'am, and I worked in a jail, so when I worked in the jail and they called you sir, and I asked one of the guys, they said, "Why you call me sir?" He's like, "Well, I can't call you asshole, can I?" And I'm like, good point. So that's why whenever I hear sir, I don't hear sir.
You hear asshole.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I hear.
Okay.
So that's why. But Becky Schmooke,
right.
Welcome to Resilience Development in Action.
I thank you for having me. You know what's great, Steve, is a podcast I did a couple months ago. We talked about this exact concept about the fact, because I do call people sir, and that's really like an important part of how I communicate. I love doing it, and so I'll do my best not to, and I will sub an asshole instead, if that's better.
If you can call me asshole, I appreciate that, actually.
I can do that. But yeah, no, thank you for having me. And that's actually a great story and a good reminder that everyone does have their own reaction to things, and we don't know it. And so it might be very weird if someone, like, does kind of bristles at the sir when you think you're being kind and polite, and they don't enjoy that. So that's a good reminder.
But when you have a big country like the U.S., I think that, coming to the Northeast around here, calling people sir is not actually really well seen. You go in the, in the South and the Midwest, sir is a common theme, and it's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's respectful. And so I think that for me, it's just how I grew up being a Montrealer, where I call them, when I was in elementary school, I call my teachers by their first name. How insulting is that?
Wow.
Yeah, but
That's
that's how
cool.
we grew up. It was normal.
But that's something I think it is smart to always keep in the back of your mind. Like when you travel, like understand the customs. I know, my husband's a firefighter and he's talked about he knows certain areas of the city, if you have populations, from, there's sometimes like a different ethnicity and knowing what is the cultural norm is really helpful in connecting and not accidentally, doing something that's going to create that disconnect that's going to ultimately make your job harder.
I think that sometimes it is all cultural. Sometimes it's also generational. And sometimes it's like, even to me, sexist or based on gender. It's not ladylike or some bullshit like that.
Yeah. And I enjoy challenging those those assumptions and those cultural norms at times. And I have the ability to do so. That's one thing I've discovered is if you go into something with a good intention and, it isn't to, you know, disturb people and isn't to be an asshole,
Right.
then it is usually better received. So
Well,
not trying to be a disruptor, just kind of just being me.
being a founder of the Stoic Edge Consulting, there's a lot of stoicism in what you're saying. So I really appreciate it. But now I don't want to jump into stoicism quite yet, but I'd like to
Okay.
jump into, hey, who's Becky Schmooke? I don't know who she is. They don't know who you are. Tell us about you.
Well, I'm the founder of Stoic Edge Consulting, and that business focuses on leadership consulting, coaching, speaking, writing, all those fun things. From again the perspective of stoicism, which we will not get into just yet. And really, it's though about redefining what it means to lead. I do think we have leadership wrong. And we've been taught it the wrong way, and we continue to talk about it in a way that leaves out some really important things. So that's what I do with that business. And then I also am founder of a business called Becky's Mindful Kitchen. And that is a fun one. I have an on site location where I host summer camps for kids. You can kind of ground in leadership, but we use a lot of cooking. So I do a lot of leadership retreats here too. And I'm in Iowa, so smack dab in the middle. We have goats and chickens and timber and archery range. So I teach archery as a
Oh, wow.
way to teach leadership and stuff and kind of bushcraft survival stuff. I have kids out here during fire camp chopping their own wood and starting fires with knives and ferro rods. So it's a lot of fun.
Your
A lot of
husband
stress on
must
that
really
day,
like it,
but
though.
uh, I could not do that business without his help, for sure.
And then you even didn't even talk about your book. Choose to handle that whole as a guide to living, leading, owning moments that matter, which is also your book, if I read that correctly.
That yep, that just came out this spring, and so that's a book that it's okay. Here's been my issue, Steve, and I want to know if you have this too. There's so many great books that I would read, and I love everything inside of it, and then I'd end it, and I'd be like, okay, like, but how? Like, how do I take this stuff and put it into action? And so for my book, I wanted to not lose track of the importance of the action steps. And that's why, like, I literally have a chapter that's it's titled "But How" at the end of each section of it with these actionable, like right now, you don't have to wait till the end. Here's how you can implement things. Because I think we do a lot of talking and we don't do enough action. And I understand the irony that I'm going to be talking for the next half hour, but
No, but I
you
think
get
it's
where I'm going.
also like, you thought, like it may be a good place to go start. Like, I want to note two things. Stoicism, something that me and I have a business partner in another venture that we talk about constantly. It's part of our work, actually. We don't have a book, but we definitely put it in place in our work. We work mostly with first responders there. And what I absolutely adore is you practice what you preach. And what I mean by that
Mm-hmm.
is we're not talking about your past. We're not talking about where you're heading. You told me exactly what's going on right now. And that's part of
Mm-hmm.
the Stoicism practice. It's not about not having emotions, but staying in the moment. And I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
part of what I think is misunderstood by Stoicism. And again, not picking on anyone, but the stepchild of philosophy. And yet it's so
Yeah.
important. And I love stoicism. I mean, can you help me like kind of demystify that concept? Because people don't get it. I think people don't get it personally.
Absolutely. It's very misunderstood. I feel bad for I equivocate it to like any person named Karen these days, like gets
Yeah.
really like unfairly like judged just because of their name. So and this happens because there's the little s stoic and then the big S stoic. So there is the word stoic, and we think of, the no emotions, stiff upper lip, Queen of England
Yeah.
type of a stoic. And then the philosophy, though, that's that big S stoic, and it's very different. The way I describe it is, for me, like I have emotions, but my emotions don't have me. Not being controlled by your emotions, and truly understanding what's in your control and what isn't. And then being able to take any obstacle that comes your way, everything that comes your way, and turning it to your benefit. And not from like this toxic positivity approach of like, find the silver lining, the good in everything, kind of cringe approach to it, but really looking
Right.
at, okay, this is what I've got. How can I use this? How can I use this, to make me better, me stronger, those around me better? And that's where, again, leadership comes in. But really, I think we spend most of our energy on the things that we can't control and not enough on the things we can.
I agree. I'm not going to name the book, but I'm listening to a book that I actually like. And a lot of it is like he talks about stoic approaches. He doesn't say stoic, but it's definitely where he's going.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't tell anyone how to apply it. He just talks about it. And one of the things
Yeah.
that people like, what's the easiest way to approach stoicism? So one of the things you got to learn to do is observe. You're not judging it. You're not trying to make sense of it. You're observing what's happening. And well, that's easy. I'm like, no, it's not, because you're thinking about how it made you feel, and you're no longer observing as soon as you think about how it felt. Observing is looking for things as facts, not as what you felt like. So, calling me an asshole is just calling me an asshole. She called me an asshole. That's affecting me. Why is it affecting me? Why did she? Now, stoicism is to explore those things and not to react to it, but rather observe it. I don't know if that's a good way to conceptualize for
Yeah.
people,
Well,
but
it's curiosity,
yeah.
right? Like it sparks that curiosity, that idea. And I apologize, I jumped in and interrupted you a bit there, but
How dare you?
that I know that idea of, the things that disturb us, and it's a paraphrase of one of the Stoic quotes, is things that disturb us, are not the things themselves, but our judgment of them. And
Correct.
so if you can like understand, like, ooh, like I just got really triggered. Like what happened there? Emotions are not bad, but there's no such thing. I don't think anger is bad necessarily. Where it turns, quote unquote bad is when we allow it to dictate what we do. When we allow it, when we scoot over and like, you drive. No, that's when things can get in trouble. But being able to use anger as an entry point to a deeper understanding of yourself, yeah, that's awesome. And there's a concept I created called word check, and it's in my book. And to briefly describe it, because it hits exactly what you're saying. Like so often we spell check, right? We check the spelling,
Yeah.
but we don't always check the words. And I kind of started recognizing, like, oh my gosh, we too often are reading between the lines and we're really bad at it. And we're responding to the stories, not what's actually being said, so we tell ourselves. And then we also speak in judgment terms instead of facts. And it's not helpful to tell somebody they're being lazy. That's a judgment. Because what I think is lazy might be very different than what you think is lazy, right? And it doesn't help them. So it's like, okay, well, what are they doing? Like, what's actually happening that you're calling lazy? And then same with, if someone says, like, did you unload the dishwasher? All you have to do is say yes or no. But rarely do we just anything with the dishwasher. Keep it at yes or no, right? Like we hear the story, we also think that there's judgment and we respond to that. And we waste so much time and so many conflicts happen because of that situation and not taking the time to slow down and check the story, check your words or check.
I love that. And I think that, there's another one that I want to bring up a little later on, which is STOA, that you also
Mm-hmm.
bring up in your book. Can't wait to be able to fully read. Again, being truthful with my audience. Haven't read it yet, just being truthful, but already like Becky a lot. And a lot of the practice, like, I'll show you how when you're a bullshit artist, you're not able to practice what you say. Factually, we were running late this morning. I'm just being factual about it. But
Yeah.
there was no judgment. There was no anger. There was no frustration. We're going to start late in the story. Nothing I can do about it. Nothing Becky can do about it. That's it. And learning
Except for communicate. Sorry to interrupt and lose my voice at the same time. But like in those moments, right?
Yeah.
To just be able to just I communicated to you, hey, I'm going to be a little bit late. And that was in my control. I could do that. And what you do with that, not in my control, and it's just, I think sometimes we make things bigger than they have to be. And so being like, okay, I mean, you're a human being, you're going to understand this. And that's what I tell people all the time. Like, okay, you really just tell me. Like I can, but we undervalue the little things that can make a big difference.
Communicating the fact, like, and again, truthful. I know you listen, but a lot of people who may be new to this, I'm just telling you like it is type of guy. Like Becky went out of her way to find my cell phone number, to text me and say, look, I'm running a little late. She didn't have access to that. She had to look it up and find a way, but that was under her control to do so. She didn't go, oh my God, nothing I can do. I'm not trying anything. I'm just backing up. She also made the effort. And if she wouldn't have found it, shit happens. But ultimately, I think that's something like we even had, getting this set up. There was a couple of things we needed to do. I wasn't upset. I'm like, hey, how are you? This is what I need. And you went, oh, sure. I didn't know it wasn't done. End the story. I wasn't upset. She wasn't upset. It was what it was. When you practice stoicism properly, that doesn't mean you're not emotional. That doesn't mean you have emotions. It's just like you can deal with your shit a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't waste time. I'm gonna have no voice. This is great because I have multiple interviews today. I can't wait. It's gonna be a good one.
The first one. Everyone else.
It's downhill from here. But no, it does fall into this idea of, again, over and over, what's in our control. And if you focus on that, it does make things easier, but I'm going to be honest, it also makes things a lot harder. And that's why, like, when Stoicism, so the first chapter on Stoicism in the book is, titled like, I hated Stoicism. And I did. When it was first introduced to me, I hated it. My husband's the one who first introduced it. And I was not.
Sorry, I gotta stop. A firefighter in Stoicism?
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, he introduced me to Stoicism philosophy.
I want to meet him now.
That was one of his majors, I think.
Oh, I think it's the
no, it was not.
I think that
my bad. Sorry.
I think that the first responder world would benefit 100% of Stoicism because they try to control things you can't control when they're outside of their work environment. And I'm like, no, you can't fucking do that at home. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, we talk about all the time. So he loves Stoicism and he introduced me to Buddhism. He's fantastic.
If he ever wants to come onto the podcast with you or just him, just let him know.
I will. So
fascinating already.
It has been really fun. And so writing this entire book, we talked about, it was, he had a hand in every bit. Like I'd bounce ideas off him. He, like it's really fun to be able to have that collaboration. But again, like looking, so he introduced it to me and I hated it. I was terrified of it because it does ask you and, not forces, but you're going to have to look in the mirror. And at the time I was not willing to do that. And so the way I handled that fear was to be an absolute butthead about it all. And I just did everything I could for a long time to tear apart the philosophy, which in hindsight, I'm very grateful for, because when you try to take something apart and disprove something as not being useful, you end up really discovering what it is. And that way. And so I was a complete asshole. And then now I've written a book about it and I speak about it and I teach it. And he has never, ever come back around and said, I told you so, or called me out on the fact that I hated it, initially. And for me, it was because I wasn't ready to do what it was asking because I was still deeply embattled with my eating disorder with bulimia. And I was like, oh boy, nope, not today. And it took another couple years, but I got there.
Well, a couple of things I want to mention since you've been introduced to Buddhism, but we resist persists. And I think that that's a good Stoic and a Buddhist thought process. So if you're really obsessing about proving someone wrong, then what are you resisting?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to keep it going. Number one. Number two, I'm happy that it helped you with your eating disorder. You want to talk a little bit about it here and how it
Yeah.
helped you? Because I would love to hear the story.
So this will bring us to that framework of STOA. So that's how
Perfect.
I created that when about 5 years ago, COVID hits, and my husband, so he's on two different fire departments. He's on shift about 100 hours a week. So he's full-time fire captain in one city, and then he's three-quarters time assistant fire chief in another. And he's helped like take that department from volunteer to now a hybrid department. So he spends a lot of time at a firehouse. And so COVID hit, and we have a daughter who has an undiagnosed lung condition. There's a lot of uncertainty in the beginning. We did not know much. And what we did know was we did not want her getting sick. And I'm a type 1 diabetic. And again, we didn't know how that would work. So, facing all this uncertainty, I realized like I got to be as healthy as possible. And I know, and I knew that being bulimic was not helping me at all in that goal of staying as healthy as possible. And I was like, crap, now's the time. And so I was like, I got to do it. And in the beginning of that recovery, and this is 20 years I struggled with bulimia, and 20 years of trying to recover, but never getting there. It was just white knuckling. And you can only white knuckle something so long, right?
Yeah.
Like eventually, and I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I got decent grips, but even my grips, your grips are going to fail on you at some point. And so this concept, this framework of STOA was created throughout that for the first couple of months of that recovery of me realizing I got to create a process. And what it stands for, so it's an acronym, because if you're in the leadership field, you have to have acronyms. It's just part
If
of
you
the
work in
requirement.
coaching or in mental health, you got to have
do
acronyms.
You gotta do it. And so STOA, so S is for success, T is for targets, the O is a double duty one. So it's obstacles and opportunities. So identify an obstacle and then the opportunity that presents. And then the last one is action steps. And I think, Steve, when it comes to strategic planning and goal setting, we often fall short when it comes to the action steps. We're really good at setting all these targets, but actually the nitty gritty details of who's going to do something, when are you going to do it? It's like if you want to get up in the morning, and a target is setting your alarm, the action step is actually setting it. That follow through matters. So I started playing around with that, and that's how I developed this process and realizing that success, if I put success as never like binging and purging again, that was the wrong outcome to put, because you have to identify the outcome that matters. And so that's something that's in your control, and you can put things that aren't as well. But if I just had never binging and purging again, I know that I would be engaging in a process that ultimately would be destructive. But if I redefine success as, being healthy, it opens it up, and there's no longer that pressure. And to be clear, in case it's confusing, if I put never binging and purging as success, that means that if I were to slip up and binge and purge, that means I failed.
Mm-hmm.
And once we fail like that, it's really easy to kind of spiral. And then it takes the pressure off. So yeah, so it just, I also know that I would have then found another bad habit to substitute. So that's what happens a lot of times with addictions. We swap one for the other, and I didn't want to do that. So that's how that created. And now that process works as a debrief. So it's a never ending cycle. And once you go through it, then afterwards you look at the end of the day, I'd go back through. Did I achieve success? Did I hit my targets?
Right.
What obstacles did I come up with? And it just, and my husband uses it, and a lot of people do now, as a journal prompt. So he does that for journaling in the morning, kind of idea of that 5-minute journal. And at the end of the day, he goes back through it. And it's a process I use in almost all my workshops, because I don't think we debrief enough. And I don't think we go deep enough. And I don't think we do the planning correctly. And so I do it when I go to Costco. I go, it can expand, it can contract. It's really neat. And to end on this is, my husband, because I know a lot of your listeners are first responders.
By any stretch. This is good.
Okay, well,
good stuff.
I'm ending. I don't know what you're going to do with your day, but I'm done. on my time. But no, he uses it when they're heading on a call. So so that's the great thing about STOA is that I can spend 8 hours with a group going through a strategic planning using STOA, or you can use it, in a high stress situation in the 2 to 3 minutes it takes you to get to a call, and that's what my husband does with his crew. And so, they're in the fire truck, and he'll take them through a STOA, and he has said, it's been incredible because you get to where you're going, and you get going. Right? You save the precious minutes, but you also just are more successful at what you're doing. And then he uses the same framework for all the after action, reports and debriefs too. And that is longer on that end. So it has a lot of applications, which I like.
Well, I think that's what I would love is like what you just said. There's so many good things that you said. Being able to achieve and get to those goals is very important. But if you make it unrealistic, it won't happen. When I talk about addiction, whether it's food, whether it's alcohol, whether it's whatever, I always tell people don't make full abstinence for the next 20 years your goal, because you are absolutely going to fail. I know of like a handful of people that do it all the time, and that's great. That's good for them. But the rest of them, they face adversities. So you need to learn. I didn't use the words observe like you do, but what happened? And when I talk about lapse versus relapse, I tell people that we all lapse. We all have a moment. That's life. But if you make it a relapse and a failure in who you are, then you're fucking yourself over. And I think that's what you're saying. And I love that mentality, because I think that brings us to, a lot of negative thoughts of ourselves. And, the people who like full abstinence of anything, or I've got to succeed by never doing that again, or always doing that, they go back with a revenge on doing the stuff they said they wouldn't do or they would do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I include a quote from this guy in my book. Dan Tallman's his name, and he's an addiction recovery counselor here.
Dan's
and
great.
He was a former alcoholic. And so he's, because he shares that same perspective as I do of we need to change how we identify the outcome of these things. And the book, okay, it's another acronym, but my leadership framework is SAFE. Because I do think ultimately leaders is our job to make people around us feel safe. And I think that that's kind of put as like, kind of like a weak, soft thing, the word safe. But it's like, no, it's like, that's one of the most badass things possible to keep people around you safe. And the E is for endurance to value the process over outcome. And it's not because I'm anti-outcome. I just feel, again, we get the outcome wrong. We have to figure out what is the outcome that matters. And it's, if we put, for me, when I went to the hospital for anorexia back in like 2000, the outcome that they set for me there was a weight. They wanted to get me to a certain weight. And so because of that, and I include in there, and I was like sociopath level with my diaries back then. Like I recorded conversations, like I wrote, because we didn't have phones. We didn't have computers.
Right.
And so all I had was my diary. So I wrote everything down for the 6 weeks I was there, and including everything I ate. And they were like, it was like I was a goose, and they were just trying to fat me up some good like foie gras, because like they just were putting weight on. And I left the hospital, and they still wasn't to weight. And so my meal plan had me eating like 8 to 11 desserts a day. And that's not healthy. And it were just packing weight on. So I didn't learn how to have a healthy relationship with food. And, the whole approach to it, it was in pursuit of the wrong outcome. And so therefore the process was not good. And then we got to kind of take a moment. What is the outcome that matters? So when something bad happens, or maybe your listeners have children, my teenage daughter screwed up, and she came to me and she was honest about it. And I had that moment where I decided, okay, what's the outcome that matters? Is it to, give her a punishment? Is it to come down hard on her? Or is it to make sure she's becoming a teenager or older? It's going to continue to happen. The outcome that matters is she comes to me when she makes a mistake, right? And how I responded in that moment right there was going to be very impactful whether or not she comes back to me. And that's what we got to slow down and figure out what's the outcome that matters.
In listening to all this, there's a few things that I want to observe. Is that once you take shame out of the equation, whether self-imposed or imposed by others, things change. And when you talk about those moments, I have 2 teenage daughters, so believe me, I relate. And the one thing that my daughters tell me is that you never shame us, you let us be. And yeah, there's times I want to cringe, and they know that too, but no shame. And what you just described is exactly right. Is like life's not made of like these long speeches or these great podcasts or a great book or whatever. It's made by moments. And if you can grab that moment, and that's safe, I don't know what the other letters stand for, is so essential because there's safety in our conversation. We barely know each other. And we were joking within seconds. And then, oh, this is safe. We can have a nice conversation. We underestimate safety. They think safety is like, oh, my door's locked. No, that's not safety. That's sometimes a prison you create. Sorry, Marcus Aurelius just kicked in. But at the end of the day, it's learning to be safe with your emotions, safe with another person, and be their safe person. And to me, that's where we absolutely forget leadership. People in power, they all feel like frauds. In my experience, anyway. We're like, how did I get here? What the hell am I doing? Well, yeah, it's because they don't feel safe of expressing what they may be struggling with because they have to be in leadership. No, just tell the truth. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Well, and so, because I know everyone's like, what does SAFE stand for? They're like, on the edge of their seats right now. So just to go through it, SAFE, the S is the strength to act and stand with integrity. A is agility to adapt to the needs of the moment. F is flexibility to reach for curiosity in adversity. And E is the endurance of process over outcome. It's all kind of sports related, not only because I just love sports and working with athletes, but it's when I first created it, I make the comparison to people go to the gym to get those show muscles, right? They might look like they're strong, but there's really no functional strength. And I think that happens a lot in leadership. It's really easy to memorize the right sound bites, right? To say the right things, but there's no real functional strength of leadership there. And you need to have that. It's so important. And that's where like redefining leadership has, that's a soapbox I'll gladly like hop onto any day because it's right now tied to a job title. And what I say all the time is like leadership is a lifestyle, not a job title. And like we have to really focus on recognizing that like a team of leaders is what you want. You don't want a team and a leader, right? A team that has a leader. No. If you have a team of leaders, well, then you can cook. To try to like not use all the words and brain rot I learned from my teenager, but like, yeah, you get cooking real quick when you have a team of leaders. Something else you said that sparked something that I wanted to make sure I touched on was actually, you didn't say this, but I thought of it while you were talking. Let me just clarify that. It sparked this thought, which is because you were saying how we'll respond to this. And the title of my book is Choose the Handle That Holds. And unless if you're a stoicism nerd, you won't probably know what that means. And it comes from a quote in stoicism, which is that every situation in life has 2 handles, one by which it can be carried and one by which it cannot. Every moment, it does matter. And it presents those handles. Which one are you going to grab? The tricky thing is a lot of times the one that will break is the one that's a lot easier to grab, right? That's the one responding, with anger. For me, like bulimia, my eating disorder, that was the handle that presented itself. It was the illusion of the one that would hold, but it wasn't. And grabbing the handle that holds, that's choosing integrity. When faced with shame, like rationalization, that's the one that breaks. And rationalization masks shame. Integrity erases it. Right. And so often when we grab that wrong handle because you're talking about shame, things do break. And what do? We sweep things under the rug, right? We don't want to put back the pieces the right way. We duct tape it together. But what we have to remember is like, okay, I fucked up and I grabbed the wrong handle. Things broke. Guess what? You get another chance at grabbing the right handle. So what are you going to do now? And that's where that idea of Kinzuki comes into play.
Well, tell me
you.
about, like, I love Kinzuki. I think that that's a very important part of life. because I
Hmm.
think that I think that pre-interview we were talking about how it relates to trauma, but please explain to people what that means, and we can grow from there.
Yeah. So it is a Japanese art. It's a way of repairing ceramics. And so instead of trying to make it look like, let's say a vase was never broken, concealing the cracks, they seal it with gold. And so you can see exactly where that ceramic, that vase, that pot, whatever, where it broke. And the idea of creating, beauty from our imperfections. And what's really cool, I mean, like this metaphor, like it's pretty spot on, which is that if you were to drop that vase again that's been repaired with kintsugi, first of all, congrats, you're a klutz. Second is that vase will not break in those same places. So
Correct.
it truly is stronger for having been broken. And there's a lot of beauty in that right there. But here's the really important thing when it comes to trauma, when it comes to leadership, everything in life is you have to have all the pieces. And too often, shame keeps us from bringing forth all those pieces. And so, as a leader, it's your job to create an environment, create a culture where those around you feel safe enough to bring you all of those pieces.
Right.
Say like, this is it. Because only then can you put them back together. And that's where like that STOA debrief part is important. Because you need to understand where all the pieces are, what all broke. Because if you don't get to, if you don't get to the core issue of that failure, all those pieces, you're going to have to face it again and again. It's going to keep breaking. It's going to look a little different, but it's going to keep breaking. And so you have to value taking the time to put things back together the correct way, not just the easiest way, not just a good enough, like this will hold for like a bit till I'm out of here way, but really, really invest in doing it right.
And I liken it to when you talk about trauma and
Mm-hmm.
strength and everything else. Stop thinking that trauma is something you got to hide. It you had a hard moment, XYZ reason, whatever it is. Celebrate it. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
put glue of gold on yourself, but say it is what it is. And the other thing I didn't get to say earlier that I want to mention for sure is one of my good friends mentions that you don't need stars and stripes to be a leader in the police force.
Yeah.
And in
Mm-hmm.
every like paramilitary personnel that you can think of, that goes 100% true. You don't need stars and stripes to be a leader. And it's something I want to mention
Absolutely.
here.
Yeah.
But
No,
as we
and my husband, he's on the peer support team too there and like in us departments and making sure, I mean, he's told me plenty of times of, the way he holds conversations is different than others probably do. And really leading with that vulnerability. He will, he talks about going to therapy. I talk about it all the time. I think everyone should be in therapy. It's like having a paid friend. It's amazing. Like they have one job and that's to be there for you. Like that. Why would you not want that? I love it. But, I think with trauma, where does stoicism bring its value? Is it really can help hold you accountable to looking at it and getting comfy with it in a new way, and also understanding what is yours to carry and what isn't. It's people. I mean, my husband, what he sees on a daily basis, like if that happened, one of those calls happened to me, I would be talking about it all the time. Like I'd be the
right.
craziest thing in my life, right? And to him, it's just like another Tuesday, and it's just, and he is, he's very deliberate in making sure he does everything he can to not make it just be another Tuesday, to give space for what it actually is, and understanding, what he has to dig into and getting curious. So when he like feels those triggers, not just shoving them down, but leaning into that discomfort.
Well, I think that to quote something else, being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's why there's a whole chapter in my book on that. Comfy in the
Well,
discomfort.
I didn't know that, but I figured you'd have something on that because
I do. It is. It's good. It's good to practice, and it's fun. The thing that I would hate to not mention this, and I know we're at time, so I'm gonna be very quick about it. Is there's this Latin phrase that I teach in all my talks. And I gotta tell you, Steve, nothing gets an audience more excited than being like, guess what, guys? We're going to talk about Latin, stoicism, and death, because I cover all three in every talk I give. But one thing I know my husband uses with helping with, getting through the trauma and stuff is that idea of stoicism. It's a Latin phrase, memento mori, which means like, remember, you too shall die, memento mori. And keeping that, that's what one of the beautiful things of everyone who's a first responder is they don't escape that perspective. They see it. And that gives you the opportunity to just, live life instead of just pass time. I don't think life is too short. I think we make it short because we don't live it. We're just passing time. You can live a lot of life in a single day. And the other thing is amor fati. Are you familiar with that phrase?
No.
Okay. It's not technically stoic, but it embraces it is stoicism. I know. Well, I just like some people they'll get angry if I don't acknowledge. Okay, so amor fati is Latin for love of fate. And what it means is like, don't just accept your fate. Embrace it. Love it. Don't just take the hits, but get stronger for them. Resilience is talked about a lot. I think resilience falls short because what amor fati does, it allows you to go beyond resilient. And what beyond resilient means is moving forward. You're not just bouncing back. So whatever comes your way, be like, fuck, this is it. What am I going to do with it? Right? How am I going to turn it to my benefit? Because you can't change it for the most part. Like, you can't control your fate. You can't control the weather. I've tried. There is just one word though I sometimes add after it, because sometimes life gets really freaking hard.
Yes.
And so sometimes, because it's literally a phrase I think out loud, or I think out loud. I think in my head or say out loud. So the word I add after amor fati, Steve, is motherfucker. Because there are times when people say like, amor fati motherfucker. It gives you permission to move beyond the like, I'd rathers, beyond the lamenting, beyond the complaining and bitching about shit, and move right into action. And that's what we need to do more of, I think. We spend a lot of time just like whining and not enough time doing, like living freaking life.
Well, I agree. I think that you're nicer than I am, because I tell people no one makes it out alive. Might as well enjoy it while you're here. Number two, originally someone made my podcast Resilience in Action. And I said, that's not enough. Resilience development. Now that makes sense, because we always have to develop more and more resilience. You never quite get there. And so like that resonated with me with so much. But as you said, time is of essence. I'd like to hear how people can reach you and get your book. And the other thing too, and before we leave, I'm going to be again very truthful with you. How about we do this again in the fall?
Sounds good. I'll bring my husband along. He's a good egg. He's a good one.
I actually like him too. Don't tell him I have a crush on him yet. It's going to make it awkward. But no, please tell people how to reach you. And yes, please come back in the fall. I'd love to do that.
Yep. So you can go to BeckySchmooke.com, and guess what? You don't have to spell it the weird way that my last name is spelled. You can just type smoke, like common spelling smoke, and it'll redirect you, because my name, it's pronounced smoke, does not look like it. So BeckySchmooke.com. Yeah, I know.
But it, BeckySchmooke.com, and I'll put all that in the show notes too. Is going to be a direct link so people can click on it.
And I post every day almost on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram.
Oh, you're on
eventually
all those
TikTok.
Things too?
All those things. Just type in my name. That one you're going to have to spell correctly, so you're going to have to figure out that one. It looks like Schmooke. SCHMOOKE. And
that's how I pronounced it. But I also asked politely if I got it right.
But I'll post videos of our baby goats as well. So it's leadership, mindfulness, stoicism stuff, and then also fun videos of goats and chickens.
And hopefully a little bit of mindful kitchen.
Yes, there is a little bit of that. You'll see some delicious pictures of things.
Well, Becky, let's find a date for sometime in the fall. Love talking to you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Steve. Did not say sir. I wanted to.
You did say once, so you didn't tell me asshole once. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States and Canada.